Welcome to MATCH B2B Insights. I'm Benny Fluman, and today we're taking a topic that gets trivialized way too often: branding. Not brand as in colors, taglines, or a prettier website. Brand as a commercial system. Brand as revenue architecture. If your market hears you and still doesn't trust you, doesn't understand you, or can't place you fast enough inside a buying decision, that is not a design issue. That is friction, and friction kills pipeline.
Exactly. I'm Daphna Cohen, and I think this is where many leadership teams get confused. They approve a rebrand when what they actually need is strategic clarity. They say, we need a new logo. But usually, the real problem is something deeper. The market doesn't know why you matter. The sales team says one thing, marketing says another, and the website attracts interest that does not convert. So, yes, branding matters, but not because it looks polished. It matters because it reduces decision friction across the entire go to market motion.
And I'm Brenda. I love this topic because executives often feel branding is somehow soft, right? Nice to have. Meanwhile, they're dealing with low response rates, stalled deals, pricing pressure, and prospects ghosting after the second call. Those are very real business problems. A strong B2B brand helps answer 3 buyer questions faster. Are you relevant? Are you credible? And are you worth the risk of choosing?
Yes, in B2B, brand influences pipeline quality, trust, conversion, and pricing power. If the positioning is vague, SDRs book weaker meetings. If the message is generic, opportunities slip because nobody can champion you internally. If the offer sounds like everyone else, procurement starts squeezing price. So when I hear, Benny, we need more leads, I often say, maybe. But maybe you first need a brand that helps the right buyer self-select and move.
And this conversation is really for operators: CEOs, CMOs, CROs, founders, maybe heads of growth, people who are responsible not for activity, but for outcomes. Because the cost of weak branding is rarely visible in one line item. It shows up everywhere a little bit. Lower conversion, longer sales cycles, more explanation needed in every meeting, higher CAC, less confidence from enterprise buyers.
I think that's the key. Good branding compresses explanation. It shortens the distance between first impression and commercial trust. That's huge, especially for companies selling into busy, skeptical decision makers.
And let's be direct. Branding is not first an identity exercise. Identity matters, sure, but first it is a market interpretation system. It helps the buyer understand what category you belong to, what problem you solve, how you're different, and whether you're safe enough to engage. If that interpretation is unclear, your team spends money compensating for confusion.
I sometimes call it hidden tax. Marketing pays it through weaker campaigns. Sales pays it through longer calls and more objections. Leadership pays it through inconsistent forecasting. The company thinks it has a top of funnel problem, but often it has a meaning problem.
That's good. A meaning problem. Also, branding affects internal execution. If your team cannot say in one consistent voice who you serve and why you win, customers definitely won't say it for you.
Exactly. So in this episode, we're going to walk through branding as GTM infrastructure. We'll go from vision to customer to product to proof, then talk about how this changes in MedTech, cyber, AI, IT, and biotech. And we'll end with what smaller companies can actually do without burning budget on things that look sophisticated but don't move revenue.
Let's build the actual structure. The process starts with vision. Why do you exist? Not the inflated poster on the wall version, the operational version. What change are you here to create in the market? If that is fuzzy, everything downstream becomes performative. Then comes customer. Who exactly are you helping? Which economic buyer, which user, which environment, which level of urgency?
Right, and after vision and customer comes product. Benefits first, features second. I'll say that again because teams still reverse it. Benefits first, features second. Buyers do not buy architecture diagrams. They buy reduced risk, faster throughput, lower cost, better compliance, clearer visibility, whatever the business outcome is. Features support the claim, but they are not the message.
And then there's the foundation layer, which people love to skip because it feels less exciting. Core definitions: brand identity, name, story, promise, values, visual identity, verbal identity, legal checks, competitor checks, domain and handle availability, internationalization. It sounds administrative, but honestly, this is what prevents expensive chaos later.
Yes, because if your brand story says transformation, your sales deck says efficiency, your founder says innovation, and your product demo says automation, the buyer is left doing the integration work. And buyers do not enjoy doing your strategic work for you. Weak alignment creates expensive confusion.
Let me make that concrete. Say an AI company describes itself as an intelligence platform for modern enterprises. Sounds impressive. Means almost nothing. Then the website speaks about productivity, the demo focuses on workflow automation, and the pricing is positioned like a premium analytics tool. That mismatch hurts meeting to opportunity conversion because buyers don't know what use case they're evaluating. It also hurts win rate because internal champions can't explain why you're different.
And the opposite is also true. When the vision, customer, benefits, and proof all line up, the brand starts doing commercial work for you. It attracts the right conversations. It gives sales a cleaner starting point. It supports price because the buyer understands the value logic sooner.
This is where brand story and brand promise matter. The story explains context. Why this company? Why now? Why this market problem? The promise is sharper. What outcome can the buyer reasonably expect if they choose you? Then identity, both visual and verbal, needs to reinforce that promise. Not decorate it, support it.
Yes, every branding decision should support a business outcome. Better enterprise trust, higher conversion in a target segment, shorter education time for a new category, faster partner adoption, something measurable. Otherwise, it's branding theater.
I always think of the one-page test. If you put your narrative on one page, can a new salesperson understand the market, the ICP, the pain, the value, the proof, and the reason you win? If not, you're not ready for scale. You're still in internal ambiguity.
And if you're expanding internationally, this gets even more sensitive. A name may sound strong in one market and confusing in another. A message that works in Israel might sound too aggressive in DACH or too technical in the US. So the GTM branding process is not branding after go-to-market, it is part of go-to-market.
Now let's get industry specific because this is where generic branding advice becomes dangerous. In MedTech, trust is not a nice layer added on top. Trust is the product wrapper buyers evaluate before they even engage deeply. Regulation, clinical proof, patient impact, adoption risk, workflow fit, all of that shapes how the brand must behave.
Completely. In MedTech, clever messaging can actually hurt you if it sounds too promotional. The buyer environment is risk sensitive. You are often speaking to multiple stakeholders with different concerns: clinicians, hospital administrators, procurement, maybe technical evaluators, sometimes reimbursement related discussions too. So your brand must reduce perceived risk across a long and careful buying journey.
Which means clinical credibility becomes central, not optional. The brand needs to signal, very quickly, that the company understands the care environment, the evidence standards, and the consequences of failure. In a lot of categories, innovative is a positive word. In MedTech, innovation without proof can sound like danger.
Yes, and that changes the messaging architecture. In cyber, you can lean into urgency. In MedTech, the sequence is usually credibility, relevance, risk reduction, then differentiation. If you skip that first step, you create resistance. The buyer may think, this sounds exciting, but can I justify it? Can I defend this decision internally? Can I trust implementation, compliance, and outcomes?
A practical example: if you're a MedTech company selling a diagnostic support platform, your brand cannot just say faster, smarter, AI powered. It needs to say for whom, in what clinical context, with what evidence, and how it integrates into existing workflows. Because speed without clinical confidence is not value, it's a liability.
And the language matters so much. Precise language, measured language, words that support stakeholder education over a long sales cycle. You're not just persuading one buyer, you're equipping one person to bring the case to others. That means the brand should provide usable proof assets, outcome summaries, clear use case narratives, perhaps implementation logic, maybe clinician-facing and administrator-facing versions of the same core message.
Exactly. Your brand in MedTech must help people say yes safely. That is the commercial function, not just get attention. And if we connect this to revenue, that brand quality can affect whether opportunities progress after an initial meeting, whether pilots get approved, and whether enterprise buyers feel enough confidence to move without months of extra explanation.
Also, in MedTech, reputation compounds slowly but powerfully. If your story is disciplined, your proof is visible, and your language reflects real understanding of the care pathway, the market starts reading you as mature. That's valuable for pricing, partnerships, and strategic credibility.
So maybe the short version is, in MedTech, branding is less about standing out loudly and more about standing up under scrutiny.
That's exactly right.
Cyber is almost the mirror image in some ways. Here, the buyer already feels risk. Threat is not theoretical, it's active, it's visible, it's budgeted. So the brand has to meet that emotional and operational reality fast, not with abstract claims, but with urgency, clarity, and confidence.
Yes, cyber buyers do not want branding that sounds poetic. They want to know, what do you protect? How fast do you detect? How well do you respond? And can I trust your team under pressure? That means the brand needs stronger threat framing and stronger operational proof. Not fear for the sake of fear, but pain-based messaging tied to a known exposure.
I think this is why so many cyber websites blur together. Everyone says comprehensive, proactive, next generation, AI-driven security. And none of that gives a buyer confidence. It doesn't tell them whether you're for cloud posture, endpoint response, identity risk, or something else. If the category and pain are not obvious, the message collapses.
Right. Cyber branding has to create immediate orientation. What risk environment are we talking about? What failure are we preventing? Why is your approach more resilient, faster, or easier to operationalize than alternatives? This is a category where specificity often outperforms elegance.
And proof of expertise matters a lot. The buyer wants signs of resilience, team quality, technical depth, and execution speed. If I'm a CISO or security leader, I'm not buying a vibe. I'm buying confidence under stress. So the verbal identity should sound competent, precise, maybe even slightly restrained. Overpromising in cyber can backfire very quickly.
A simple example. If a company says, "We eliminate cyber risk," that sounds inflated. If it says, "We help security teams reduce response time and improve visibility across hybrid environments," now I know what kind of conversation we're having. The second one feels more credible because it aligns with a real operational problem.
Also, the buying motion in cyber often rewards pain-based entry points. If risk is already top of mind, your message should connect directly to existing tension, downtime, exposure, alert fatigue, resource shortage, compliance pressure. The buyer doesn't need to be convinced that the problem exists. They need to be convinced your solution is trustworthy and usable.
Exactly. In commercial terms, a strong cyber brand improves response because it mirrors the buyer's reality. It improves conversion because it provides a sharper category fit. And it supports pricing because expertise plus urgency reduces commoditization. If you sound like just another security vendor, price becomes the deciding factor. If you sound like a credible answer to a specific risk, the economics improve.
So the lesson from cyber is that branding should carry operational confidence. It should feel like the company knows the battlefield, not like it hired a creative team to invent one.
Perfectly said. Let's bundle three sectors that people lazily treat as similar, even though the trust mechanics are very different: AI, IT, and biotech. If you use one generic brand message across all three, you're almost guaranteed to create confusion.
Let's start with AI, because this is where hype has polluted language. Many AI companies say the same things: intelligent automation, data driven decisions, transformative productivity. The market is saturated with claims. So AI branding has to do two things unusually well: differentiate and clarify use case. If the buyer can't tell what job gets done, for whom, and under what conditions, the brand disappears into noise.
Yes, and in AI especially, being broad sounds sophisticated internally, but confusing externally. A sharper message like, "We help revenue teams qualify inbound enterprise leads faster," is much stronger than, "We unlock intelligence across the customer journey." Buyers need applied value, not futuristic language.
Exactly. AI trust comes from relevance plus boundaries. What does it do? What does it not do? And why should I trust the result? Without that, demos may generate curiosity, but not buying confidence.
Now, IT. IT branding usually lives in a more practical trust environment. Here, reliability and service confidence matter enormously. Buyers want to know that systems will work, support will respond, implementation will be disciplined, and operations will stay stable. In many IT categories, the brand wins not by sounding revolutionary, but by sounding dependable and commercially safe.
Right, and that can sound less sexy, but it's powerful. If I'm buying managed IT services, infrastructure support, or enterprise implementation help, I'm not looking for drama. I'm looking for competence. Clear scope, accountable delivery, low friction, good service reputation. The brand promise has to reflect that.
Biotech is different again. There, scientific authority is central. The market reads signals like scientific depth, rigor, data quality, and seriousness. The language must be precise. The story must respect complexity. If the brand sounds too commercial and not grounded enough in science, credibility can erode immediately.
Exactly. In biotech, your audience may include researchers, partners, investors, and business development teams, all with different expectations. So the brand needs to bridge scientific legitimacy and commercial clarity without oversimplifying. That's a difficult balance.
So AI needs use case clarity and differentiation. IT needs reliability and service confidence. Biotech needs scientific authority. Very different proof requirements. Very different verbal tones. Very different ways of earning trust.
And that's the broader point. Branding is contextual. The message architecture, the proof strategy, and even the acceptable emotional tone depend on how buyers evaluate risk in that category. One-size-fits-all branding is not efficient. It's expensive laziness.
Now, the practical question every small company asks: this all sounds right, but what if we don't have the budget for a full brand system? My answer is usually good. Start where it matters. You do not need an expensive rebrand to improve commercial clarity. You need disciplined prioritization.
Exactly. If resources are limited, prioritize three things first: positioning, messaging, and one strong proof asset. Positioning means who you serve, what problem you solve, and why you are meaningfully different. Messaging means a clean narrative that sales, marketing, and leadership can all use. And one proof asset means something concrete that reduces buyer doubt: a customer case, an implementation summary, a data-backed use case story, something real.
I'd add customer interviews right at the top. Low cost, very high value. Talk to recent wins, stall deals if possible, and prospects in your target segment. Listen for their language. What triggered the search? What made your offer easy or hard to explain internally? What almost stopped the deal? That language is gold because it improves both trust and conversion.
Yes. Then build a sharp one-page narrative. Not 20 slides, one page. Who we help, what pain we solve, why now, what makes us different, what proof we have, who should not buy from us. That last one is important, by the way. It protects focus.
And create a simple brand book. Very simple. Core message, tone of voice, approved descriptors, visual basics, and examples of how the company should present itself in decks, website copy, and outbound. You're not aiming for perfection, you're aiming for consistency.
Small teams also need to resist the temptation to market to everyone. Choose one ICP, one segment, and one revenue motion first. If you try to speak to hospitals, manufacturers, banks, and startups with one message, you'll dilute everything. Better to be narrow and credible than broad and forgettable.
Absolutely, especially under budget pressure. One ICP means one pain pattern, one value story, one set of objections, one proof route. That makes content easier, sales enablement easier, and measurement much cleaner.
This is where founders often struggle. They worry that focus will limit opportunity. In reality, lack of focus usually limits conversion. A smaller company cannot afford branding that requires every prospect to interpret what the company means. Clarity is a leverage tool.
And honestly, the first version doesn't have to be fancy. A strong homepage headline, a one-page narrative, a cleaned-up sales deck, a proof asset, and aligned language across the team can already change the quality of conversations.
Yes, brand maturity can come in phases. First, reduce confusion, then improve credibility, then scale expression. Don't reverse the order.
Let's talk measurement, because if branding is a revenue system, it needs revenue-adjacent metrics. The big mistake is measuring brand only through visibility, impressions, generic awareness, social engagement. I'm not saying those are useless. I'm saying in B2B, they are incomplete and often misleading.
Yes, the better question is, did the market understanding improve in a way that changed commercial performance? So look at meeting to opportunity rate. If the brand and message are clearer, a higher percentage of meetings should turn into qualified opportunities. That is a meaningful signal.
Then, win rate. Not just overall win rate, but by segment. Because if your new positioning is aimed at a specific ICP, you want to see whether that segment responds differently. Same with conversion by segment through the funnel. Better branding should improve fit, not just volume.
Sales cycle length is another critical metric. Stronger brand clarity can reduce education time, reduce repeated explanation, and help internal champions move the deal forward. You may not cut the cycle in half, obviously, but even meaningful compression matters, especially in enterprise motions.
And CAC efficiency. If you're attracting the right audience with sharper messaging, you should see better efficiency over time. Maybe better lead quality, maybe less waste in outbound, maybe more productive paid traffic. The point is not that branding replaces demand generation. The point is that branding makes demand generation work harder.
I'd also watch qualitative indicators from sales teams. Are prospects getting the category faster? Are objections becoming more specific and easier to address? Are buyers repeating your value proposition back to you accurately? That's not a vanity metric, but it is useful operating intelligence.
And all of this should be grounded in research. Real customer language matters. If your brand vocabulary reflects how buyers think, describe pain, and defend decisions internally, trust goes up. Sales performance often improves because reps are no longer translating internal jargon into market language on the fly.
That's such an important point. Research is not a branding luxury, it is a conversion tool. Customer interviews, lost deal reviews, sales call analysis, even simple pattern recognition from objections. These inputs help the company speak more precisely, which increases credibility.
So maybe the cleanest rule is this. If your branding work cannot be connected to better trust and better sales performance, it's not finished. It may be prettier, but it's not yet strategically useful.
Exactly. In B2B, brands should make revenue execution easier to scale.
Before we close, we should address the reality many Israeli companies are operating in right now. Teams are working under wartime constraints, uncertainty, disrupted routines, and in many cases, tighter budgets. That changes how companies prioritize. It also makes clarity even more important because when resources are constrained, every GTM decision has to work harder.
Yes, and this is exactly why branding should not be treated as cosmetic. In periods like this, companies cannot afford wasted motion. They need sharper positioning, better segment focus, and a message that helps them compete internationally without burning money on broad, unfocused activity. The pressure is real, but so is the need for disciplined revenue infrastructure.
And for Israeli companies listening, there is also something important to know. There is a unique, state-supported solution available for Israeli companies. If this is relevant to your business, the best move is to get the details directly, rather than guessing what may apply.
Exactly. If you're a founder, CEO, CMO, or commercial leader trying to build a stronger go to market brand and a real operating pressure, reach out and get clarity. Sometimes one focused conversation can save months of misaligned execution.
You can contact me directly on WhatsApp at +972 524 203 043. Again, that's +972 242 03043. If you want more information about the state-supported option, or you want to think through how branding should support pipeline, trust, and conversion in your specific market, message me there.
And if this episode helped you reframe branding from a design project into a revenue system, that was the goal. We'll keep going deeper on the mechanics in future conversations.
Benny, Brenda, thank you. This was sharp and very needed.
Thank you, Daphna. Thank you, Brenda. And toda to everyone listening, especially those building through a difficult reality and still pushing forward.
See you next time. Bye, everyone.